Okay, thank you. Next one, Anders Eriksson Modin. Yes, head of development at FOIAB and working with a regional climate initiative from the municipality. Or, yeah. Yep. Here.
Perfect. Thank you. So my name is Anders Eriksson Modin. I am actually head of sustainability at FOIAB.
Okay.
But also I'm here as a group lead at local climate initiative LFM30. So I'm going to tell you about this and what we do in the material group that I'm leading. But I'm going to start with putting things into context. So what is the issue on the table? I say that one issue is that we need to build more, especially on a global level. Maybe not so much in the Scandinavian countries, but we see that we have an increasing population, we have an increasing wealth, and the city and the society is never static. It's in constant development. So how can we build more? At the same time, we need to pollute less. You know all the figures about CO2 emissions from the construction industry. So when we put these together, I think one of the solutions could be do more with less. So moving on from a global overall scheming level down to the national level, these are the roadmaps for climate neutrality when it comes to the Nordic countries. And we can see that Norway has the most ambitious plan, and they want to be net zero emissions in 2030, and then you have 5 years gap, so followed by Finland, Iceland, Sweden, and then Denmark. And this is actually the root cause for founding LFM30, that Malmö Stad reached out to the construction industry and said 2045 it's too far away. We need to take action faster. We need to do stuff right now. And therefore, so what is LFM30? It is a local roadmap, it's a climate initiative, and it's also a collaborative network with the overall achievement to achieve a climate neutral building and construction industry in Malmö within the year of 2030. And these are the overall goals and objectives. So the members that have signed up for LFM30, everyone should have reduced greenhouse emissions by 50% until 2025. And developers, they must have started at least one climate neutral project. And then moving on to 2030 is actually moving the entire portfolio so that everything you do, and it's not just building, it's also site construction and renovation should be climate neutral. And then the next step is to reach for climate positivity. And this is state of the organization right now. We are 210 members, and some of them are huge on a global level with tens of thousands on the payroll, and some of them are small. I think what's really impressive with the organization is that you have a broad representation with different parts of the value chain from the construction industry. It's not just the usual suspects with developers and architects and construction firms, but you also have financial institutes, you have research institutes, you have law firms, demolishing firms. So you have a broad representation of all the stakeholders. And all are equally important, but maybe the most important ones are the developers because they had taken the stronger pledge in making this action happen. So the organization is divided into 7 focus areas, and these are the 7 bubbles. So I'm group lead in the top bubble, with focusing on the climate impact from building materials. And if we had more time, we can go into detail, all the interesting stuff that are happening in these bubbles. But if you just want to highlight one thing, it's the first one, focusing on business models and incentives, because we think it's really important when you have all these stakeholders that you also can have a viable business. So to sum it up in short, right now between 2020 and 2025, it's about learning how to climate calculate, building confidence, trying this in pilot projects, sharing knowledge, standing on common ground. And then the next step after 2025 is to move your entire portfolio. So that when we are in 2030, everything that you do should be climate neutral. And if you, I mean, we can have a discussion about climate neutral and how you define it, but we can take that in the bus later. I'm gonna skip this one. So 5 years of LFM30, I would say that the most important thing is about Malmö as being this testbed for climate neutral pilot projects. I mean, if you just do the math, we should have at least 46 started projects in the next year. And we don't have that today, but maybe we will see more in the coming 8 to 10 months. And it's also very much about developing this climate calculation method. And a large part of the first years in LFM30 has been about developing this method. And it's also, we can see today that it's referred to in a lot of competition, and also when Malmö Stad is handing out plots for developers, they point at the way of climate calculation. And then I wanted just to give one really striking example, and we have measured the amount of purchased eco-concrete or green concrete, and then when we compare it to different regions in Sweden, we can see that in Malmö or in the south of Sweden, it's now more or less a standard that you have stage 2 climate reduction. And you can't see that in the other parts of Sweden. And we say that this is thanks to LFM30 to a great extent. So what do we do in the material group? We've heard that earlier about it's a lot about raising awareness of the climate impact when it comes to material and sharing knowledge and pointing at good examples. Maybe you're familiar with this pyramid, material pyramid, like many nice graphic and self-explanatory things. It's come from Denmark because you're really good at making these nice graphics. And you want to be in the bottom of the pyramid because then you have the low emitting materials. But you could also think of things like this. This is not from building materials, but from the food industry, because I think all the materials has a spectra or a span width. And I mean, everybody's aware that it's better for the environment to eat fish than red meat. But at the same time, the best red meat is better than the worst fish. So a lot of the work in this group has to be about knowing the span width of different materials, pushing material suppliers and producers to lower their span width, and also making members aware of how you could get the lowest one. So the last thing I want to talk about is the newest thing happening in LFM30, and that's the Materialforum or Material Forum. So I would say, to explain it, it's a platform for dialogue between construction firm and producers, suppliers. And this sounds really easy, but it's never happened before, so I think sometimes the easy solution could be the right one as well. So why is this important? Well, when you look at the construction phase, 80 to 90% of the climate emission comes from the materials. And now we've been focusing on learning how to calculate and sharing knowledge, but at the same time someone said, we can't calculate our way down to net zero emissions, so it comes down to materials. So what we have done is that we have gathered a lot of the producer and material suppliers in a room together with the big construction firms, and then we just, for the first time, asked the question, what do you need to become fossil free? What type of actions do you need to be able to make necessary investments? And this could be guarantees for future businesses, it could be early dialogue or policies for how we buy things. And this is happening right now. The next meeting is on 3rd of December, and I think it's we hope to develop this into some kind of concrete action plan that helps the material producers to take the necessary steps. Thank you.